Okay, when it comes down to, say, our choices, if you were thinking about this every day like I was, some people do. There's a lot of people that have their own thing, you know what I mean? That they really enjoy or find that their purpose is in, and when they do them things, it's fulfilling themselves. But the whole reason why we fulfill ourselves upon what we do from the inside is because, in a sort of sense, as, say, time rolls on, we discover more of ourselves to, say, unlock more things and traits. We look back and we really recognize all them little aspects that were the bigger aspects of now. But that's why we had that passion for it. Now the thing is it is a separation. It is about control, you know. And ultimately the control really needs to end for this to be. So when there's advertisement and we find the common ground, just say in what's professional and what's not professional, then we think that everything that we have to do is that's professional, and then we get the job done by doing it that way. But really, you know what I mean? If we have a lesser of an aspect, like if we don't have a lot of people, say, doing that thing to be the function of that thing. Now, if you just have one person doing it, they're getting paid to do what they do, to try to do their job, but they're just getting paid for the money to do it. You know what I mean? So it has to be outside of that fact, outside of what we think of as right and wrong when it comes to what gives in this world for our race as a society. So when I'm saying what gives, means what's possible. We have this money system, we have all these regulation systems that, you know, are fine and dandy. It's just that when we realize that all the people with good intentions tend to not make it, and then the people with, say, the bad intentions or something that get merged with it, is somebody's behind it with the control to do that in the first place, to get what they want out of it from what they're paying people to do. But at the same time, every person is not being 100% controlled by that. They're still their own personality, and mixes in with it. But at the same time, if it goes against, like, ignorance is bliss, which ignorance is not bliss, you know what I mean? So when people get on the natural function of what's real inside, but saying, say, a lie on the outside, it causes that effect in our reality. So you realize when there's, I was doing a meditation over there, that's why I'm in a little different state. And when you zone in on things, when you stare and things blur around you or start to turn or shift, you know, what is that really when we're tapping into that? When things look a little bit more blotchy with color and like there's an auric field, when you zone into that is because you're zoning into the light, you know. And when your eyes do that, some things fade out, because the real reality is that we adapted to physically see, and that in itself is a real function of what we observe. But when we take that and we zone into a different faction of itself, it's rewiring itself in different ways. So that's why when I was staring at that light with the aura going around it, and I noticed just the green and the pink aura, but then when I tapped into it and got on higher degrees of myself, I could see all the light spectrums in every aura. But in each time, it takes us a little bit of noticing to tap into it. But the thing is, to live on that function all the time will be when, you know, all the belief systems that the can't and then what could be, people get to the stage of what could be, but it's hard because of the natural energy cycle. Like the birds, all these birds are in really good mood. There's hardly ever a bird fighting with each other. Now the reason why that is is because they're on a natural energetic scale themselves, which they choose. It's not about the control system. See, that's what screws it all up, because that natural freeness of what it emanates and creates from, for what's cohesive to the planet. So, in a way, just say, like they talk about Satan, just say Satan was sent to a planet that was all really high vibrational, nice, just like, but the thing is, there was nothing wrong with society. So they had the rules and regulations to have it peace-filled, like with that orchestrament of what they uphold. So if any time they do anything outside of the fact that, say, is a wrongdoing, that no one's in that wrongdoing, they cast out what that is. Just like in this world, it gets down to the point where people are getting away with more things that are evil and stuff like this. So then what happens when somebody comes into the mix in that circumstance and is a good person and trying for that, they're going to cast him out. Just like bullies, they cast people out. You know what I mean? But the thing is that what I realized to fix all this reality, through all my timelines, I remember singing that song and actually recording it right here. I was walking around. And the thing is to fix these timelines, and you know why it's so tremendous and it hits you like home, has these big aspects of monumental things in it. All the thought forms in your life that you've been thinking of or that popped into your head is so valid, but that triggers all that from the past of what was real. And each time that does that, it shows you the truth of like how deep the feeling is when we are no longer in this vessel and how deep it really gets to. But outside of the fact of what we truly are is what we need to step into. Because being our natural function is good, all right? But to switch something, to make it right from a wrong, it's not in our nature to do that because it was already right. So the only way to do that on the best function that there ever was, because when this was happening through eons, we could never figure out how to fix that. And how to fix that is really, tossing onto certain people exactly what they've kind of influenced to make them see it in a certain way outside of the fact of anger, because they resent anything outside of that fact and they know it is wrong when they get treated that way from something else externally. Doesn't mean about that situation that they're denying that fact of what they got mad over. But it's the point of that when we want to, correspond with other people saying that are on like that, the best way to go about it is not just to agree with them, not just to do this either, but to really get down to the root of it. Especially if your vessel cannot handle it, it's the best time to do that, but in the ways that are better. Because the thing is that there will not be a way of it fixing itself if we do that same pattern. The only way we can get around it is when we go and talk to these people, say, that are making these big influences. And, when I do this, I want to do this like 100%. Now let me explain. Like, say, President of the United States or anybody else. They, inside of themselves, have good intentions. They have who they are. It's life, and all the information and stuff are valid of whatever they're talking about, whatever they're doing, upon what was the creation from of whatever it came from. So regardless of what's right or wrong, in that sort of sense, we can realize that every function is a valid function of itself, that outside of that fact of being in a function that doesn't not exist, isn't in existence yet. But that's because of what we choose, of what we are to totally engage ourselves within too. But that conscious field of what we observe and look back and reflect on or get mad over and, look back at some of your Facebook posts. Of all times you either got upset or, whatever. But it's all valid of this function that's playing out. But what creates that function in the first place? You were born how to talk and think and act. And if that goes against what you are, it creates that hostility. And so the thing is, in itself, you are right for upholding it, to try to change that. But at the same time, when you let it get to you to do that, you're going against the fact of yourself, which I have, it's this game, that's playing out, that it's hard in that function to not be triggered by that, because we automatically are in the truth of that living function of what we originally are. It's the living essence that comes in every form of any life. And the thing is, when I'm a human being, I'm on the conscious field of human beings. See, I get affected by it. What trees, they're in their own conscious field of it. But when I look at this, a tree's function and tap into that function, to get on that wavelength, that function, it takes a lot of time, because we are not wired genetically in each incarnation to do so. And that's why when integration comes in handy to, say, bring this tree's consciousness and the field of that on the side of what they were originally with to begin with. Because when the oxygen level was higher on the planet, instead of going right up to a tree and breathing in that oxygen and actually getting, its benefit of that full life force energy to correspond with everything else, and being a natural function of itself, it was on the degree of that, what we feel internally every day, of the functions that don't have words, the timelines and everything else. But you got to realize that all of what we knew in what's changing now, we realize these facts that we have to put our energy into what it is. We have to be so selfless to the fact that we get empowered. And when I say that, is when I gave myself up to myself, I was being selfless to do so. I was trying not to, because everybody, when I was little or when I was running off, people thought I was showing off and this and that, thought it was a bad thing, and all this clarity in my head was, it was this fight, it was this battle between what it was. And all the ego is siding with something they know is wrong. They're not really sitting right in their soul. They do it anyway to get the benefit out of the energy. See, that is what ego is. That's basically sacrificing something else's happiness for your own, when it puts it into a context of that. If it was, say, if somebody was getting bullied and you're on the side of the bully, but instead of doing the right thing and you really wanted to say it, but out of the side of that, you just played off and fake it. All ego is really just faking who you are, just to please others. That's all it really is, in that sort of sense. Now, that word can get annihilated as soon as people stop focusing on that word and literally push forward onto better things, like making other things happen, their true intention. And when they keep on doing that, projecting that, no matter whoever says whatever about what's going on, that won't exist for you. It won't eat you up the way it did before, because if you don't live from the ego is not in your life at all. When you hear other people talk about it and this and that, they're just trying to get at the underlying thing, which is real, which people do. You know what I mean? And that's just an aspect that we created a word to consciously be aware of. That brings that up. But the thing is that when we don't have them words, it's all stripped from us. We're still aware of what all this is. We're still aware of that function without the word. We can imagine a tree growing in our head and its function and its life force and its consciousness without a word. So the thing is that when we say things and stuff, we got to look inside of our heads to say it in a way that everybody else on the inside, when they mentally think about this, that they're going to be totally on the awareness of that their function is right, that they're not wrong. When they were little, everything was that of what it was. Their experience of what they think or what they hear inside their head, what it all is, it all either comes from you or externally. And the real honest fact about all this is that when I'm integrating, I'm gaining a lot of facts, but I have to just do a meditation without integration to get back on the wavelength of what's inside of me. Because if I'm always tapping into other things, you got to do the work both ways too. Because like me playing guitar for a long time. That's an aspect of mine, rather than saying making podcast videos. But every once in a while, when I did a podcast video, say a long time not doing a guitar, I'll be like, wow, this is valuable. And now I'm realizing the fact of, what all that holds with what we are. I mean, humans are really great in their potential. At the same time, if they can't keep up with themselves or have their will for the trueness of what it is, which they all do. I mean, I see that people fight for, what they truly believe in all the time, but it's just like there's so many people that from their daily life and the function of it, and as people buy into more stuff that is created and stuff, we got to realize, what is it doing to us? How much is this getting produced to affect this place that we're living in? And to be totally honest, it's like, what do we truly desire? What do we truly want other than that same old stuff that gets produced? That little toy. Is there something more beyond that little toy that we want more of? Yeah. And the thing is that what I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with the consciousness of what we think of things. And that gives us the essence of it back to ourselves. Of whatever it is. But I'm just saying, like, it's really hard to describe what I truly, want for this to happen. At the same time, it's all up in the air and I'm good, but at the same time, I'm karmically affected by everything. I've been back here just to do this all again, and other people has as well. In incarnation-wise. And that's why certain things, are so familiar. And the thing is that I'm trying to make you realize that when we look at this big picture, and we see this big thing about how many people could be really freaking happy with one aspect rather than many. Or just, you know what I mean? It's like we could all be functioning off of one thing, which we are, this earth. And yet, there's so many things outside of ourselves, like this universe. But yet we're so satisfied with this earth because we don't know anything outside of the fact. When we know more things outside of the fact, we want to engage with that. It's our natural function to develop, right? But that thing in itself, we realize that it takes value out of other things that we valued before. What's wrong about that is if it gives you a temporary satisfaction with the real truth of it was the real satisfaction, which you always remembered. I mean, what you do, but when you lose, say, your daily function of things that gave you joy before, and you're on a different wavelength of that, and say if it's a little bit more generic, a little bit more chaotic, now what would be better for you ultimately? You'd want what was good and healthy for you to be and thrive in, because no one wants that. When I experience pain and all the other stuff, every time I'm in it, I want to somehow get rid of it. I want to just throw it on my chest, or hate the pain itself to get it away. And when I'm fighting through that, it never lasts for a long time. You know what I mean? It'll only last a day, and then after that day, it'll be fine. It's not like this cycled pattern. What that is just energy in the field. And when it hits you, that energy, you will feel it, and it's tremendous in a way, because when you're doing many things, say if you are evolving and getting into higher frequencies of things, you'll start to see through a lot of other things. But it's just like all the movies and everything, subconsciously we do it. Subconsciously I see all this thing, like the Matrix and all this other stuff. It is all intertwined with the real truth of what's played out through history. Of anything that we created or done, it stemmed from what this is here on Earth. Or anything that we know or understand here. You know what I mean? And the thing is that higher dimensional realities, which I tap into, and other things on different dimensional planes, the reason why I know that's real is because what we tap into and know. Anything outside of our knowing, there's like if something was created yet, or did not exist, or had an energy function of that We simply wouldn't be in that function of it to be experienced. So how many things we're experiencing on planet Earth? We say the supernatural, we say the natural and these functions of itself. But beyond that, I know that there is more. But in this function of itself, its degree which it wanted to accept, it rolled into. And the polarity for change in that it's a transition, so no one likes a transition as much because they're comfortable with the natural cycle of what they're in. Because every time they do a transition, stuff's different. Time might seem like a longer day or this and that. And necessarily, if they don't want that time to be longer, they're going to resent that fact of what's going through. Now, can't you see what I mean? So when we're waiting, we don't like waiting. Because we're, you know what I mean, in that characteristic of what that is. Because if everybody that's waiting in the world and what they think of it, we get out of it of what it is in general. Now, if we made waiting a humble thing that we could take pleasure into, we orchestrated our minds to, you know what I mean, had a real pleasure into what that is on a mass scale, everybody would be on the function. Just like if you went to a new world that said no evil existed, they didn't know what that was, and something was there like that, they would resent that because it's not of what they're, not just because of what they're familiar with on that scale of things, but that in itself that they know is wrong because of their sense of what they are as a living thing. Now, the thing is, if that function, say, went backwards, you would see the exact opposite of what that is. And when no one likes to be in that, regardless of what they think, that's why the creation of God to begin with, that created, say, everything and all the dimensional things, that in itself, you realize that in itself is something more than what's here on Earth. It's something that is based off of elsewhere. A plane way more, not as like physical as this place. Like, it is and it isn't. Like, the way we think of it, I get an ethereal, I feel light. It's how we eat, it's how we do things, it's how we think of other things like wild animals, like the wolf population. Like if they say if it's out of the endangered species list now. But like the thing is, some people think wolves are bad because it kills our creations, or like the farm animals of what we eat, produce, that we consume. So it's basically our control of that creation. Now, just that out of itself, we think, oh, for our meat, then that's bad for that to happen. But a wolf does not see a deer as being bad when it kills it. It's just hungry. It just wants to eat. It ultimately, if it's seen a deer and it's not hungry, it wouldn't waste its energy to do it. So it realizes that fact of its normal function. It doesn't have anything outside of the fact with that function. That's why when I say that control, you really got to start controlling yourself with all the information that's out there. To be the stable person to be the reflection of. Like, everybody else that keeps getting caught up of what's happening, when we envision all of what could just be, and we just do that outside of the fact of what's happening, we create that, quite literally. You know what I mean? So that's when I'm just trying to make you guys realize that it's not like it's all up to me, but I'm just saying, if I made you understand things that no one else yet has told, like this information and all this, and to be totally honest, the whole day I did not sing or do anything. I just was silent. I just didn't even feel it in me to do it. I just felt like just meditating or doing that, or just not even thinking at all. Sometimes I have nothing, no thought. But yet, in that of itself, we are aware and taking conscious effort into our thought. But our thought is not just a word. It could be an image. It could be, anything. So that's why there is no right way to say explain it. Because the thing is when we're there, we're going to know everything. Right? When we're, say, outside of this existence. in a physical vessel. We will understand fully, but you just got to realize that what I'm saying, it's ultimately, you know what I mean, it shouldn't be this hard for this people to I don't know. I'm trying all of my day to try to, you know, meditate, do this to cause that effect, and I know it does happen. It does have an effect. That's why things are changing. A lot more spiritual people coming to the forefront and feeling more free. When I freed myself, it was a big barrier. And when I did that, one person, I felt this traumatic shift, and the energy could flow through me then. When you were in resistance to all that there is to say go through, and they're telling you not to, you realize that, you know, eventually you're going to have to face what you told yourself that I had to do just because people said you had to do it. You know what I mean? This world is still on the function everywhere to be like that. But the thing is that it's just like this natural function. They're taking that natural function, twisting it to make you think that it's not really that natural function, which you're living in now. We all are. It's just, like I said, they talk about programming. It's all everywhere. I mean, I'm just trying to talk about the things that no one else is talking about quite yet. Because we need all the information we can get out, put out, so we can get back. What we get back from others is what we get back to ourselves. We realize when this energy merges and there's more people, say when you go to a party, you have a really, really good time, but when you go back, you feel like a big bummer. But why do we ever have to go back anymore? Like, why you gotta charge your phone? Why you gotta charge your phone? So why do you go back home? You gotta go back home. See, from a long time, like a year ago, I had all these little sayings come through me. And it's because I was in that enjoyment of what this realness is. But besides the little games of our enjoyment of what we do, there is this basis of what really matters, of what to put out so others can understand exactly what to do in certain situations, because we're not always going to be in this high thing. Now, when we reach in the low states, the knowledge comes in to play, which saves you from going into something that's lesser than what you are, because of the fact of what I'm tapping into every day in my life is the real function of what exists in me as an existing being. And to remember, when I was a child, I just remember growing up that I lived and died millions of times, and there's a lot of pain in that. And when I'm tapping on these trees too, mankind affects almost everything, because when they cut down a mass thing, they're getting affected by that, the whole area. But when natural things take its course, like cat kills a bird or this and that, on a lower scale of things, the function of itself, there was not that big threat. So it was not that big of a deal. So life in general knew that it was all fine. And they knew the cycle of itself, and the death wasn't a bad thing. But when man takes it to the next level, affects the whole planet and all life on the planet, that's when the souls come down to earth to defend what we are all connected to and a part of, that goes from this realm to the next realm, vice versa. It's affected. That's why spirits, things that you see in this real life, happen. And I want that more to happen. I want the truth to be revealed to mankind throughout all the things. And all the things I'm doing, I'm revealing to you. But certain days I don't feel it in me to, you know what I mean, just to sing and do all that. And sometimes I feel like, in the cycle of things, I do have to play different moves. And that's in my own cycle of myself giving me that validation of